Welcome to CillaReads. I want to thank everyone for letting me read their dreams in my 4th narrative upload. It took a lot of research of subreddit groups and personally contacting people so I can narrate on this channel. I want to give a shout out to the people in the subreddit group, Paranormal Encounters, for contacting me with their experiences and interest in this channel. I really appreciate it, and will have content for the next 3 uploads after this one. The description box has timestamps with experiences as well as my email. I hope to expand the content on this channel. For now, I will upload bi-weekly. If any of that changes, you will be notified if you are a subscriber with the notification bell switched to all. Thanks for your patience. Here we go. Sometimes I get really intense dreams that even years later, I still remember very well. I feel like this dream has an entire series attached to it, but I think I'll only share one of these dreams for now. I was a teenager and very into heavy metal, culture, and reading about all different types of religions and myths. I never actually read the Bible or Quran, but I like reading what people believe in. I'm not sure if it's because of this openness I have to the world that these dreams started to happen, or maybe they were warnings or something. In the first dream I had, I was working in a toy shop that I can only describe as the one in The Great Mouse Detective by Disney, or even like Sing Song, Oh You Beautiful Doll. If you're curious, you can find it on YouTube. I'm in my early 30s, but I love watching cartoons from the 40s and 50s. The cash register was one of those red 40s type. The toys were all dolls, wind-up toys, and they all looked handmade. Some coworkers and myself were closing up shop. I was counting the money in the register, and I suddenly started to feel a pull to this very large full-bodied vintage wall mirror at a dead end of the store. The only odd thing was that the glass was black, and I couldn't see my reflection. But just as I was turning away to wherever I was going, the mirror started to ripple like liquid metal. I stared at it frozen in place as a person started emerging. The person almost had the face and makeup of Tim Curry in Rocky Horror Picture Show, curly hair and all, but they also had full, bare breasts and horns. They said to me, "You may know me by many names. Lumiere, Alien, Lucifer." They told me that I knew I had something to do and that I was behind. I ran away as they came out of the mirror, and the person told me to come back and that I know what I have to do, and that if I don't do it, they would kill my friends. I hid, like a coward, behind the register. I peered through the little hole in the wooden counter and saw my friends, who I guess were my coworkers, being chased around by him. I also noticed that they had hooves and were wearing heels. Yeah, I don't know how that worked either, but my friends began to shrink and turn into dolls before they were crushed by the entity. I crawled away from behind the register as I heard the heels hit the floor so hard it sounded like the hooves were hitting the floor instead. They were catching up with me, but I woke up just in time. I want to preface this with a few points first. I want to say that I completely believe in all things paranormal, otherworldly, you name it. I'm sure it exists. I also want to mention that I was born and raised as Catholic, so I've been baptized, done my confession, First Communion, Sunday school, all that jazz, not by choice. I'm not all that religious now as an adult, and I don't really agree with organized religion, but I do believe in spirituality, and to each his own. So, last night, I had an extremely vivid dream, an experience that has had me on edge all day. I dreamt that I woke up in the hospital, loosely strapped to the bed. I was alone, and unsure of why I was in there, so I looked around to see if there were notes of anything. Maybe a scribble on a board, or maybe a chart of some sort, but there was nothing. After a while, a nurse came in and asked me how I was feeling, and let me know that my parents would be visiting later in the day. My parents show up, visibly concerned, and I don't understand why, because I still don't know why I'm in there, but I also feel fine and don't see anything wrong with me. They tell me that a priest is coming by, and now I'm even more confused. My mom leans forward and does the sign of the cross on me, and I flip out, and then I see him, the devil. He's suddenly sitting right next to me, but everyone else is gone. He tells me I now belong to him, and I might as well surrender because he's never going to let me go. I start objecting and telling him to let me go and leave me alone, and he starts taunting me, and then I start to feel a burning pain all over. I'm screaming and thrashing about while he's laughing and enjoying himself. and suddenly he's gone. I start hearing my parents' voice, and he says, "I'll be back." And suddenly he's gone, and my parents, the nurse, and a priest are there. They then let me know that I'm possessed, and they're going to try everything they can to save me. The switch back and forth keeps happening of me being alone with the devil, and then I suppose coming to, and everyone else being in the room. Each time I meet with the devil, the burning pain is worse and worse. This continues for what feels like days, until the doctors and priests are confident that it's over. And just like that, I'm released. The dream ends with me walking out of the hospital with my parents, and as I'm walking, I pass a child, and he looks up at me with huge, terror-filled eyes. The look he gives me lets me know that he sees something else in me, and that I'm still possessed. I wake up in an instant after that with cold sweats. Here's the truly terrifying part. As soon as I open my eyes from the dream, I hear a voice whisper in my ear, "Your house just burned down." Clear as day. I grab my phone and see that it's 4:41 a.m. My husband and our 11-month-old baby are asleep next to me. I panic, and it gives me an ugly feeling because we are currently living in an apartment out of town while my husband works on a year-long project, and for that duration, my mom and her husband are living in our house. I want so badly to call my mom to check on her, but I don't want to disturb her, and I'm also terrified still from this dream and trying to make sense of it all. After that, I struggle to fall back asleep because, obviously, but also anyone with a baby knows you sleep when you can, so I tried my very hardest to go back to sleep and then was so relieved when my mom called me at 9 a.m. for a daily chat. So, the way I found out that ghosts could communicate through dreams was when one that followed me showed me how he died. I had 5 ghosts following me, including a little boy from Asia, China, Japan, somewhere around there. One school in our district is very much haunted, likely because it's right next to a cemetery. And there were a bunch of them that liked to stab people, and the rumor for that was that they were mistreated teachers and bullied kids that were pushed to suicide. And they tended to go for the back. The little boy would cling onto my back so it wouldn't hurt me as much. He never talks and never shows emotion. One night I had a dream that played out kind of like an old movie. It showed the little boy holding a man's hand, and he was talking to another man. It turned out that the little boy's father was in debt, and the man he was talking to came to give the dad one more chance to give them the money. It skipped ahead to nighttime and showed their straw hut in flames. The man that wanted his money burned down the house with the family asleep inside. After a minute of seeing the house burn, I woke up. I was sweating, even though it was winter and my mom had the AC on, and I'd kicked my blankets off in my sleep. I looked around to find the little boy sitting next to my pillow on the opposite side. He was turned, just staring at me with the same emotionless expression. So, I have recently moved back to my childhood home for a short while given the pandemic and to help my parents get a few things ready for winter, like cleaning the heater. Last night, I had a god-awful dream, which actually scared me. I'm rarely scared. In the dream, I kept getting calls, and only I could hear the voice on the other end, and it kept trying to get me to go with it to hell for something. I even play voicemails for my friends or talk to it on speaker, and only I can hear it. I tried to tell everyone I knew about what I heard and what happened in the dream, but no one believed me. Towards the end of the dream, I am telling my brother when the thing materializes behind him. It's a comically scary beast and grabs my shoulders and pushes me down, collapsing me. Cue to this morning. I tell my brother about what happened. He said, "What did it look like?" To which I replied, "Unlike most demons from hell, this one was wearing blue." And he replied, "A light blue?" To which I confirmed, and that the thing's face looked like a Halloween mask. My brother proceeded to tell me that he had seen this exact beast once at the doorway to the basement of our house when he was getting water, and he ignored the beast. Months later, he saw it in the doorway to his room in a similar way to my dream. However, after these events, he began to suffer from a sleepwalking bit where he would walk towards the basement at night until our mom stopped him. The weird and somewhat scary part is he still remembered the voice, a similar tone to what I heard in my dream. I should add, we have watched the same TV all our lives and are very similar, and the house is very old, so pressure changes causes all the doors to open unexpectedly, except for my bedroom. Does anyone on here know what this could be? What did my brother see? What was in my dream? Update. I asked my mom if she had been familiar with this entity. She had. She said she had a similar nightmare in her house and confirmed my brother's sleepwalking bout. She told me she has always been afraid of the basement in this house, as she can sometimes hear a banging noise out of there. I've never heard it, but she's lived here longer. We still don't know what it is, but she assumes it's an entity which doesn't like to be bothered. Does anyone have any clue what it is? This dream occurred during a long nap on the evening of March 9th, 2015. There was background music throughout the entire dream. It was Sullen Girl by Fiona Apple, but it had a 1970s folk music vibe to it. There was a live play being performed, and it was written by teenage Bob Dylan. It was a kind of folk music opera, and it was about a family who was affected by something that was referred to as the Moonstone Virus and Apocalyptic affliction. This was the title of the play, opera. The family consisted of a mother, a father, with two sons. One was 18 and the other was younger, anywhere between 7 and 10. Dylan's girlfriend was a teenage Lisa Edelstein, who played Lisa Cuddy in the TV show House. Dylan was performing in the play as well. There was a scene that was called the Moonstone scene, which featured two naked men sitting at a round wooden table with a lamp on it. The lamp was spherical and had a pleated lampshade. The other man at the table was John Goodman, and the other was Bob Dylan. The scene opened with the two nude men at the table who were not facing one another, and they sat facing in the same direction and reposed like Rodin's thinker statue. The color red was dominant in that scene, not a bright red, but an earth tone. And the last part of the dream was at a beach. There were two young blonde men relaxing on the sand, and one was giving the other a head massage. They both reminded me of Taggio from the 1971 film Death in Venice. And then a little blonde boy of about 6 or 7 ran up and kicked sand at them. I wasn't sure if this was playful or slightly malicious. The dream then started to end. As I woke up, I was sobbing. My mom, in the dream, was trying to look at me to see if I was alright, but I wouldn't let her see my face. I woke up alone on the floor of my apartment. I had fallen asleep on a couple of small, semi-deflated beanbag chairs. I immediately put on Sullen Girl and felt completely overwhelmed with a flood of complex emotions. The dream was extremely abstract and difficult to describe. There was much more to it than the small details I could remember. I felt intense sadness and a sort of melancholic euphoria throughout. I felt like I was physically crying during the entire dream, but woke up with no tears on my face or any sign that I had been crying. The euphoric feeling had to do with the sense that I was using my brain in a way that I never could while awake. I saw all these meaningful connections between seemingly random things that I tried to hold on to during the lucid stage of the dream so that I could remember them when I woke up. Unfortunately, I didn't come away with much, but there was still a lot of significance. Fiona Apple came out with her newest album, Fetch the Bolt Cutters, on April 17th, 2020, which was recorded from 2015 to 2020, mostly at her home in Venice Beach, Los Angeles. As I mentioned at the beginning of this entry, this dream occurred in 2015. The boys at the end of the dream were on the beach and reminded me of Taggio from Death in Venice. There's synchronicity between where the album was recorded and the beach at the end of the dream. Also, the song Sullen Girl has a lot of beach-related imagery to it. Blonde on Blonde is arguably Dylan's masterpiece, and there were two blonde youths and a little blonde boy at the end of the dream. I can't help but notice the subtle connection between the word cutters from Fetch the Bolt Cutters and the name Cuddy, the character from House played by the actress whose younger self was in the dream. I didn't know it at the time of the dream, but Bob Dylan's immediate family was similar to the one in the dream's opera play, which contained a mother, father, and two boys. Dylan's brother and only sibling is 5 years his junior. And the most uncanny thing about this is that I had no knowledge of any of these connections at the time of the dream. That the bolt cutters would come out almost exactly 5 years later. I learned all of this information this year because I was looking through my dream journals and happened to reread the dream. It was the very first dream I recorded in my current journal. I noticed some synchronicity and connected the dots just recently. And the more I reflect on this dream, the more connections and synchronicities I find. I will conclude with one of the eeriest coincidences, that a supermoon occurred on the evening of March 9th, 2020. It happened to be the biggest and brightest full moon of 2020. A supermoon is a full moon that falls near the perigee, a point in the moon's orbit when it is at its closest distance to the Earth. I had a dream about something called the Moonstone Virus on March 9th, 2015. March 11th of 2020 was when the global pandemic was declared, and March 9th, 2020 was the biggest and brightest supermoon of that year. Make of that what you will.